The nominations have been announced and the great yearly rock and roll tradition has begun. Voting? Well, yeah, but what I'm talking about is the annual debate. It's Rock and Roll Hall of Fame time. Nominees, snubs, predictions. That's all coming up right now on Track by Track. Hey everybody, my name's Kyle and this is Track by Track, music reviews, news, and commentary. Thanks for tuning in today, and if this is your first time here, please take a second to click subscribe so you won't miss future reviews and more. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has announced the nominees for the class of 2023, and as you might expect, it's yet another crazy mix of generation and genre-spanning selections. We've got all flavors of rock and roll, from classic to new wave to metal, alternative, and grunge. We've got pop, new and old, as well as rap and country acts that are guaranteed to generate polarizing opinions. As for me, I'll say there's acts here that I'm thrilled to see getting recognized, one or two very surprising selections, as well as several names I fully expected to see on this year's ballot. So let's get into it. Here are the nominees for the Rock Hall class of 2023. Kate Bush, Sheryl Crow, Missy Elliott, Iron Maiden, Joy Division and New Order, Cyndi Lauper, George Michael, Willie Nelson, Rage Against the Machine, Soundgarden, The Spinners, A Tribe Called Quest, The White Stripes, and Warren Zevon. All right, so there's a lot to break down here. As always, we've got a mix of first-time nominees along with acts whose names we've seen on the list multiple times in the past. Out of the 14 names on the ballot for 2023, over half of them are first-time nominees. Among those acts, Missy Elliott and the White Stripes are being nominated in their first year of eligibility, which is an accomplishment in and of itself. Looking at the rest of the nominees, only 3 are repeats from the 2022 ballot, compared to 6 repeats on last year's ballot. In fact, for Rage Against the Machine, this marks the 3rd consecutive year they've appeared on the ballot, bringing their total nomination tally to 5, the most of any on this year's list. The Spinners and Kate Bush are tied at 4 total nominations apiece. If there's one word I'd use to describe the Rock Hall's list of nominees this year, it would be fresh. What I mean by that is that the majority of the acts selected for nomination this year feel relatively fresh in terms of the length of their careers. The list heavily skews toward acts that were at the height of their success during the 80s and 90s. For me, it's kind of like a snapshot of my youth. I mean, acts like New Order, Kate Bush, Cyndi Lauper, George Michael, and even Iron Maiden were a big part of the soundtrack of my teenage years. I remember playing Rage Against the Machine and Soundgarden when I was a DJ on my college radio station. And during my first full-time job after college, managing a record store, I remember playing Sheryl Crow's debut album in store many, many times. But where this year's list feels particularly wanting is in the lack of older acts that made their biggest impact during the 60s and 70s. Warren Zevon is pretty much the only classic rocker nominated this year. That's not to say it's undeserved, though. He's been eligible since 1995, and the fact that this is only his first nomination is pretty shocking. In popular culture, he's probably considered more of a one-hit wonder, but among musicians and songwriters, he's widely respected. Then there's the Spinners, an R&B act that's been around since the early 60s, but like Warren Zevon, probably had their greatest success throughout the 70s. This marks their 4th nomination and their first return to the ballot in 7 years. They've actually been eligible for induction for over 30 years. But with a career dating back to the late 1950s, Willie Nelson has them beat. He's been eligible for induction for 40 years this year, yet this is his first ever nomination. Following the induction of Dolly Parton last year, Willie Nelson was one of the acts I thought were pretty much guaranteed to land on the ballot this year. I mean, if you open the door for Dolly, not to mention Johnny Cash a number of years back, Willie Nelson is an obvious choice. More obvious, I think, than Dolly. Willie has long been a bit of a rebel that arguably embodied more of a rock and roll spirit than country. If you've seen my Rock Hall Snubs video from a few years ago, Willie was in my top 10. In fact, about half the acts I had on my Snubs list have been inducted since then, and I fully expect Willie will make the cut this year as well. Which brings up the whole genre question, or what is rock and roll? I feel like this is a topic I've covered pretty extensively here, so I don't want to rehash the whole debate again today. Here's where I stand on the issue. Since the very beginning of the Rock Hall, from the very first year, the Rock Hall has signaled that their interpretation of rock and roll was going to be more broad in terms of sound and spirit. They inducted R&B acts alongside traditional rock acts in the very first year. Since then, we've seen inductions include acts more commonly considered pop, soul, dance, electronic, hip-hop, rap, jazz, and yes, country. The rules, so to speak, of the Rock Hall's game have been established for decades. So every time someone complains about a nominee by saying, "That's not rock and roll," I kind of roll my eyes, because that narrow definition of the words rock and roll was never intended in the first place. You don't have to like it, and I understand if you don't, but that's the game we're playing here. If you don't want to pay big bucks when you land on Boardwalk with 4 hotels, don't play the game of Monopoly. It is what it is. With that in mind, what can I say about Missy Elliott? She's the best-selling female rapper of all time, and she's enjoying her first Rock Hall nomination in her first year of eligibility. This is another nomination I fully expected to see this year, and based on her success and impact, I have no doubt she'll be inducted into the Rock Hall. Will it happen this year? I'm not so sure. After all, we've got A Tribe Called Quest on the ballot as well. This year marks their second consecutive nomination, and they've actually been eligible since 2015. Between these two rap acts, I think Tribe probably has the edge in terms of critical respect. I hear them referenced in music conversations far more often than Missy Elliott, so I suspect they might get the nod first, though Missy's time won't be far behind. Let's talk about the other first-time nominee in their first year of eligibility, the White Stripes. This was the biggest surprise on the list for me. I definitely didn't see this one coming. And if I'm being honest, I'm not sure I would nominate them at all, let alone induct them. On the other hand, I do think that Jack White has been building a highly impactful career that at some point deserves recognition, perhaps in one of the categories like musical excellence. But in the performer category with the White Stripes, that's not working for me. Looking at the rest of the first-timers on the list, we have several acts that feel like they were inevitable nominees, but not necessarily inductees. Cyndi Lauper has been eligible for over 10 years, and I'm surprised it took this long for her to be nominated. She had some really big hits in the 80s and on MTV, but I'm not sure her accomplishments rise to Rock Hall levels. A decade later, Sheryl Crow made her big splash, and while she's not been in the spotlight in recent years as much as she was in the 90s and early 2000s, she's remained a very active presence in music. She's also been embraced by rock icons like Bob Dylan, the Rolling Stones, and Eric Clapton, so she's well accustomed to keeping company with Rock Hall royalty. I don't think this will be her year, but I think she has a good shot at some point in the future. Then there's George Michael, who I doubt we'd be talking about if all he was known for was Wham. For me, I think he had a pretty remarkable solo career and made several truly great albums. He worked with legends like Elton John, Queen, and Aretha Franklin, and he fought against oppressive record label contracts. So yeah, I'm on board with this nomination, and I predict he'll see strong support in the fan vote as well. Still, not so sure he'll get in on his first nomination. The final first ever nomination is the one I'm most excited for, though, and that's Joy Division and New Order. I think most fans hoped, if not expected, that if they were ever to get the Rock Hall's attention, it would be paired together this way. I agree, it is entirely appropriate. I'm certainly a Joy Division fan, and for me, their evolution into New Order following the death of Ian Curtis was one of rock's greatest transformations. Still, as much as I'd love to see them inducted, and as a fan, they're easily my personal favorite on this year's list, I truly don't think they'll get the win. I think they're perhaps a little too fringe for most US music fans and maybe more impactful in the UK. Speaking of which, let's talk about Kate Bush. First of all, following her huge bump from Stranger Things in 2022, I had no doubt whatsoever that she'd get her 4th nomination in 2023, and her 3rd consecutive year of being nominated, in fact. But I have to say, prior to Stranger Things, I thought she had no chance at all of getting into the Rock Hall. I essentially said the same things about her nomination in both 2021 and 2022. Take a listen. Kate Bush has a passionate and loyal fan base, no doubt about it. But the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has a tendency to skew pretty strongly toward acts that have been more successful in America. In the US, many would see her as a one-hit wonder. But Bush's popularity is far greater in the UK. Consequently, I don't see her getting in this year, or possibly ever, I hate to say. Yes, I recycled a bit there. But I stand by what I said back then. Things have changed, though, big time. I'll be very curious to see how Bush fares in the fan vote this year. She only ranked around 9 or 10 in prior years, so will the resurgence of her song Running Up That Hill see her running up that chart? I definitely expect to see her fare better with fans this year, and regardless, I've got a strong feeling an Induction is now in her future. As for Soundgarden's future, I think they'll need to look a little further out. This year marks the band's second nomination, and I have a feeling they're going to need to wait until at least their third. I think there's too much competition on the ballot, and they're likely to get edged out of the top slots in favor of several other acts I'm certain will receive stronger support. On top of that, there's the ongoing legal battles between the surviving members of the band and Chris Cornell's estate, which would probably cast a dark cloud over their induction. Maybe better to settle all of that drama first. Then there's Rage Against the Machine. As I mentioned earlier, they're the most nominated act on this year's list, receiving 5 nominations in the past 6 years, starting in their first year of eligibility in 2018. If anything, that tells you there are some extremely determined members of the Rock Hall working to get these guys inducted. 1 year ago, I was sure those efforts were about to pay off. Here's what I had to say then. This band has just received their 4th nomination in 5 years, so clearly there's strong support for these guys. With such a consistent and concentrated series of nominations, I have a feeling this will be their year for Induction. You know what? I'm going to double down on that bet again this year. Can the Rock Hall possibly deny Rage a 5th time? Well, obviously they can, but this time I don't think they will. Otherwise, there's always 2024. Finally, let's talk about Iron Maiden. They've been eligible for induction for almost 20 years, and shockingly, this is only the band's 2nd nomination. Last year, Judas Priest was inducted, which was a major victory for metal fans around the world. I don't think it would be unreasonable to say that Priest and Maiden have likely been unwitting rivals for the favor of metal fans within the Rock Hall. The odds of them both being nominated within the same year were nearly impossible. Priest getting inducted in 2022 does 2 things. First, it blows open the door for more metal acts to follow. Second, and perhaps more importantly here, it removes Iron Maiden's biggest competitor in the metal genre. I mean, who else could stand in their way now? Well, maybe the 13 other acts sharing the nomination, but certainly no other metal acts. And one last thing about Iron Maiden. They were actually your top pick in my track-by-track viewer votes Rock Hall Snubs countdown. No other act had as many votes from this audience as Maiden. It wasn't a total landslide victory, mind you, but a decisive decision nonetheless. So again, I'm predicting a strong showing for Iron Maiden in the fan vote, and probably a long-deserved induction in the class of 2023. Speaking of snubs, it really is as big a story every year, the acts that didn't get nominated as the ones that did. In terms of long-snubbed acts that were ignored once again in 2023, some of the big names missing are Jethro Tull, Grand Funk Railroad, Styx, Bad Company, and Emerson, Lake and Palmer, none of whom have ever received a single nomination. But the snub that stands out the most to me is Devo. They've actually been nominated 3 times in the past, including last year, so clearly there's somewhat strong support from within the Rock Hall membership. But the fact that they didn't land on the ballot in 2023 makes me wonder if perhaps the Rock Hall has other plans for them. In 2021, we saw Kraftwerk inducted with the Early Influence Award. That's not a nomination category. It's an award that's purely at the discretion of the Rock Hall, similar to the Musical Excellence Award that was actually used to induct Judas Priest last year. In Kraftwerk's case, they were not on the ballot in 2021, so it was a surprise when their award was announced. Judas Priest, on the other hand, was on the 2022 ballot as performers. So seeing them shifted instead to the Musical Excellence Award did raise some eyebrows. Still, the way the Rock Hall looks at it, an induction is an induction. Kraftwerk and Judas Priest are officially in the Rock Hall. Could Devo follow a similar path? I would not be surprised at all to hear their name when the class of 2023 is announced. All right, so the time has come for me to make my predictions for who I think will be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for 2023. In both 2022 and 2021, I picked 5 out of 6 correctly, so I've got a pretty decent track record. And remember, I'm not picking personal favorites here, nor am I saying who I think should be inducted. These are the acts that I think the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame members will end up voting into the class of 2023, starting with Kate Bush, Iron Maiden, Willie Nelson, Rage Against the Machine, The Spinners, and A Tribe Called Quest. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I got it wrong with Rage Against the Machine last year, so I'm really rolling the dice on them as one of this year's picks. For their sake and mine, I hope this is the year for Rage. And of course, with the special award categories, it's always possible we could see any of these acts inducted that way instead, like Willie Nelson for early influence or Iron Maiden for musical excellence. But it is also pretty rare for those awards to pull from the same year's nominees list. So, expect the unexpected. Now, if you want to make your voice heard, be sure to participate in the online fan vote. You can find that at vote.rockhall.com. Votes will be accepted daily through April 28th, and the top 5 vote earners will go on the official fan ballot to be tallied with the member vote. The final list of the 2023 Rock Hall inductees will be announced in May, and the live induction ceremony will take place later this year, likely in October, with a broadcast on HBO and HBO Max in November. Meanwhile, what are your thoughts on this year's list of nominees? Is there anyone that you think has a lock on being inducted? Or are there acts you think don't quite deserve the honor? Who is an act that got snubbed this year that you think should be on the ballot? How do you feel about rap and hip-hop groups going into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? And are you one of those who thinks this whole thing is just a sham anyway? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Once again, my name's Kyle, and this has been Track by Track. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, plus check out some of these other videos below that I think you might also enjoy. And of course, be sure to subscribe, because true music fans always want new releases the day they come out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.